Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Amma ba'd. Alhamdulillah, we have completed 4 books so far in the syllabus that we are studying, part of level 1. There are 7 books in level 1, and alhamdulillah we finished 4 of them so far. The first book was Ta'zeem al-Ilm, the glorification of knowledge, where we learned about the importance of knowledge and how to seek knowledge and some of the etiquettes of a student of knowledge. The second book was Usul al-Thalatha, the 3 fundamental principles, which was discussing the 3 questions asked in the grave: who is your Lord, who is your Prophet, and what is your religion. And then the third book was Al-Qa'id al-Arba', the 4 principles, i.e. 4 principles related to the topic of shirk. And then the fourth book was Tafsir al-Fatiha wa Qisar al-Mufassal, the tafsir of Surah Fatiha and the short surahs at the end of the Quran. So alhamdulillah, these 4 books we have completed. Now we're moving on today to the 5th book. And the 5th book here is titled Important Lessons for Every Muslim. Ad-Durus Al-Muhimmah, important lessons li'ammat al-Ummah, for the general Muslims or for every Muslim. I.e. these are things, everything in this book, or most of the things in this book, are from those things that every single Muslim should know. And it's written by the Imam of his era, Imam Abdul Aziz Ibn Baz rahimahullah, who only passed away over 20 years ago. And the Sheikh, he was blind, but at the same time he was from the greatest scholars of hadith in the recent times. But even though he was such a great scholar, you'll find that he would always be teaching the people that which they needed. So he would, for example, Usul al-Thalatha, which is the second book that we studied, when he was a judge in Dhilm, which is in Riyadh, he taught it over 100 times. In a small little book, he taught it over 100 times. Now he could have turned around and said that I'm a big scholar of hadith, I should be teaching Bukhari and Muslim and these other big books. But most of that would go over the heads of most of the people. Alright? But what do the people need? The simple things. So he would teach them that. And likewise, from the books that he has is this book here, Important Lessons for Every Muslim. Because he knew what the Muslims were going through, he knew what would benefit the Muslims. So he authored this book, and in this book are those things which every single Muslim needs to know. And that's why, even though this is the 5th book that we are studying in the syllabus, if you haven't attended the previous lessons, you still should attend all of this whole book, because in this are things that you have to know. Now obviously there will be certain things, certain concepts I might go over a bit quicker. For example, the tafsir section I'll go over a little bit quicker than normal, because we did a whole book on tafsir. Likewise, the aqidah points will go over a bit quicker. The fiqh points that we've not taken, so that will take our time on, and so on. So therefore, if a person really wants to benefit, then try to catch up on the previous books that we've already taken. So why are we studying this book? We are studying this book because it's something that every single Muslim needs to know. And it is what the advice of the ulama is, written by a scholar, somebody who passed away only recently, so he knows what are the things that the Muslims need, and he's written it in a very easy way. Now the book is titled Important Lessons for Every Muslim. Here, as you can see, it says explanation. So the PDF that I sent in the group is an explanation of the book. So the book itself isn't as long. What I've sent, obviously, is a lot longer. That's because Shaykh Haytham Sarhan, who is one of our teachers from Medina, he's explained the book. We went through his explanation for Usul al-Thalatha and Qawa'id al-Arba'. He's also explained this book as well, Ad-Durus Al-Muhimmah. So we're going to use his explanation. And inshallah, most of what I will say will not go outside of his explanation. So if you've got the book with you, now in terms of physical copies, we don't have any physical copies at the moment, but I'm working on it. Maybe inshallah give it, I'm going to try in a few weeks, try to get a few physical copies. If not, or if it gets delayed, then the PDF has been sent in the group. So make sure that you either, if you're using iPad or whatever, open that up, or if you like a physical copy, then print it out. Because whatever I say, most of it will not go outside of what is written in this PDF. Yeah, so it'll just save you a lot of time. If you've got the PDF, or if you've printed it out, or if you've got the book, then everything's already written. You just have to understand and then make sure that you go over it. Now, for those who have attended the previous lessons, know that revision is something very, very important. So therefore, everyone needs to revise. And the beginning of every single lesson, I'm going to test you on what we took in the previous lesson. So it's not one of those that you're just going to attend and just forget, because there's no point coming. And I don't have time for students who are just going to waste their time like that. So make sure that you revise. And honestly, it doesn't take long. If you've understood it, sometimes it's 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes going over it. Just quickly getting one of your classmates to test you or something like that. That's more than enough. I'm not asking for 10 hours of research or something like that. So make sure that all of you revise, especially when it's things that every Muslim needs to know. So without any delay, we'll start with the book, inshallah. Right. So as you can see, the yellow box, what's in yellow, that's what Shaykh Ibn Baz mentioned, and everything else, that's the explanation by Shaykh Haytham Sarhan. So the Shaykh, he starts off by, he starts with the Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and then he starts by praising Allah and also sending salah on the Prophet ﷺ and his companions and so on. And this we've talked about before, so I'm not going to talk about this again. And he says these words, i.e. what he's written in this book, are about some of the obligations upon every Muslim regarding their religion, and I have named it the important lessons for every Muslim. So this is the introduction, he's mentioning the title. Right. Why do we study these important lessons? Okay, the Shaykh Haytham, he says, because they are important, as the author has mentioned. Right? So somebody says, why are you studying this book? Because it's important. It's literally in the title. Right? In fact, it's obligatory. A lot of the things in here are obligatory for a Muslim to learn. And number two, so the scholars have advised us to study it, or to study them. So when I ask you next lesson, why are we studying this book? We say, we are studying this book because it's important and obligatory. It's not, the book itself isn't obligatory. No one can say this particular book for you to study apart from the Quran and so on is obligatory. But the information within here, that's obligatory. So you need to know about the basics of Aqidah and of Tawheed and Shirk. You need to know the basics of how to pray your Salah and how to do wudu and everything like that. Those things are obligatory. And the second answer you're going to give is that it's the advice of the scholars, the advice of the ulama. Right. Now the Shaykh brings a doubt that some people may bring. Some people, they say, you know what? I'm a student of knowledge. I've been to a lot of lectures. I've studied. I've learned Arabic. This type of book is for the general people. Ammat al-Ummah. In Arabic, when he said awam, it means like the general people. People who just attend here and there, pray salah here and there. But I've studied. I don't need to study a book like this. Right? Some people may think that. They think this is a basic book. Right? So what answer does the Shaykh give? We'll read it. If it is said they are important, but for the beginners, while I am a student of knowledge, my level is above the common Muslims. What do we do? How do we deal with this type of person? The answer is, he or she should be tested. And if they do not pass, then they are even lower than the common Muslims. Why are they lower? Because the common Muslim knows, okay, I need to learn, so he learns. This person thinks he knows, but he doesn't know. So if a person says, this is a basic book, I don't need to study a book like this. Right, just test them. Just test them what's in the book. If they fail, then they're worse than normal Muslims. They're worse than those people that haven't studied. And if they pass, then okay, alhamdulillah, they passed. But then they still should study out of revision and so on. A student of knowledge should be humble and not think he or she is better than others. Especially when it comes to different books. SubhanAllah, sometimes you'll find ulama teaching basic books. Even attending, sometimes a scholar, like another scholar who's well recognized is teaching, you'll find other ulama sitting in their lessons, out of their humility. And you never know, there might be, subhanAllah, studying, even if you've studied that book, studying it again has so many benefits. Firstly, if a different teacher is teaching it, then they mention different things. For example, we're sticking mostly to Shaykh Haytham Sarhan's explanation. Now there's other explanations as well. Shaykh Abdul Razak al-Badr, Hafizahullah, has an explanation in Arabic and in English. And there are other explanations in English as well. So if anyone does want extra information in their own time, you can read Shaykh Abdul Razak's explanation. That's for extra information. Okay, but most of what he said is in here. I've read both. Most of what he says is in here anyway. But he does mention a few extra points, a few extra adillah, and so on. But that's the first benefit, right? That if you keep studying a book, you learn different things, even though it's the same book. And secondly, it's revision. So maybe you study it, but you've forgotten it. So when you revise, when you listen to it again, you revise that which you have learned. And everyone requires revision. There's so many things I learned in Medina I've forgotten, and when I hear it I'm like, oh yeah, we studied that. So I need revision. And one of the forms I revised is by teaching the book. This is my revision. Alhamdulillah. Right. In Sahih Bukhari, Mujahid said, the shy and arrogant person will not attain knowledge. So the shy person, you can't be shy. If you don't know, you can't turn around and say, I'm not going to go, I'm not going to sit in this lesson, I'm too shy. Or there's youngsters, there's kids, I can't sit with kids, I'm an adult, and out of shyness I don't sit. Or anything, or you got a question you don't understand and you don't ask, that person won't learn. Because he doesn't know, and then he's not asking, he's not trying to learn either. So he's just going to remain ignorant. Right? He's going to remain jahil. And the arrogant person won't learn because he thinks he knows, so he's not going to put any effort into learning. So we need to make sure that shyness and modesty is good in the religion and is praiseworthy, but in certain places. And it is dispraiseworthy in other places. And from the places that is dispraiseworthy is that if you need to speak the truth or you need to learn and then you are shy, that's when it is dispraiseworthy. And likewise, arrogance. A student of knowledge should not be arrogant. Right. So these important lessons, what do they consist of? In other words, how is this book split? Remember, we took this question in Usul al-Thalatha. We took this question in Qawad al-Arba'. Ta'zim al-ilm, you can answer. It's quite straightforward. It's an introduction and 20 principles. The Surah Fatiha is the same thing. It's just one-page introduction and the tafsir of every surah separately, right? So let's have a bird's eye view of what is inside of this book. Now there is something I'm going to slightly change. So the numbers will change slightly. Make sure you mark it, because I want you guys to memorize it the way I say it to you, okay? Right. The first part of the book it says the way the early scholars read the Quran, memorized it, reflected upon its meaning, and acted upon it. If you want a very short, concise, simple wording, the first part of the book is basic tafsir. Basic tafsir of the small surahs. Now, Ibn Baz rahimahullah himself doesn't actually do tafsir of the surahs. He just mentions that you should know the tafsir of these surahs. And what Shaykh Haytham has done is that he got the tafsir of Imam Sa'di and just copied and pasted it into this explanation. And we're going to talk about why he chose the tafsir of Imam Sa'di. But point number one is, in simple terms, basic tafsir of the small surahs. But if you want a bit of a more explanation, do mention that we also talk about how the early scholars read the Quran and how they memorized it and how they reflected over its meaning and how they acted upon it. That's the first part of the book. The second part of the book, it says here, explanation of Islam, Iman, Ihsan, worshipping Allah alone, Tawheed, and the categories of shirk or worshipping other than Allah. Again, it's a bit long. If you want a shorter wording, this is a basic aqidah. Basic aqidah. Okay? Now with these 2 points, if you say both, I'm okay. If you say basic tafsir and basic aqidah, I'm happy. If you say the wording that is written here, I'm also happy with that as well. Right. Number 3, it says explanation of the prayer, and number 4, explanation of wudu. What I want you to do is combine them two as one, okay? And reword it. I don't want the wording of the Shaykh, I want to reword it. Which is basic fiqh of worship. Basic fiqh of worship. Okay. What does that mean, fiqh of worship? Firstly, what is fiqh? Fiqh, in simple terms, is rulings pertaining to the physical actions that we do. So how to pray salah, how to give zakah, how to fast, how to perform hajj, buying and selling, marriage, divorce, criminal law. All of this comes under the science of fiqh. When it comes to our beliefs, what we have to believe about Allah, where is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what do we have to believe about the Prophet, the belief, that is all aqidah. That's the science of aqidah. So aqidah is more knowledge based, like it's things that you have to believe in. Obviously it does manifest on your limbs, but the asl of it is that it's information that you have to believe in. And when you actually do the physical actions, that's the science of fiqh. In Arabic it's called fiqh. In English it's translated as jurisprudence, but let's stick to the Arabic, which is fiqh. So basic fiqh. Now in the actual book, Ibn Baz rahimahullah, I believe he only mentions salah and wudu and salah. Shaykh Haytham Sarhan, what he did is that he summarized the fiqh of zakah, fasting and hajj, and added all that in as well. He added all of that in as well. So now instead of making all those separate points, one's about prayer, one's about wudu, one's about zakah, one's about, alright, just give me one point, which is basic fiqh of worship. Why am I saying the word worship? Fiqh of worship, that terminology, it refers to salah, zakah, fasting and hajj. Basically the pillars of Islam, apart from the first pillar. Why isn't the first pillar part of this? Because it's science of aqidah, the shahada, believing in Allah and the Prophet ﷺ, that's part of aqidah. Okay, that's fiqh of worship. Then you have the other types. So the other topics that I mentioned to you, they're the other types of fiqh. So we have fiqh of transactions. That's your buying and selling and all of that. Then you have family law, which is your nikah and talaq. Then you have criminal law, right? So fiqh of worship, if you hear that terminology, in Arabic they call it fiqh al-ibadat. Yeah? Ibadat, plural of ibadah, which is worship. So the third point is what? Basic fiqh of worship. Basic fiqh of. So far, in simple terms, we have basic fiqh of, basic tafsir of the short surahs. Then we have basic aqidah. And then we have basic fiqh of worship. Yeah, so far, it's quite easy. Then the next point, now obviously if we are, rewording it, what number are we on now? 4. Because remember, number 3 and 4 we have made into one. So make sure you cross that out and make a note of that, because I'm going to test you the way I explained it, okay? Now I don't want anyone arguing me later when the book says this. I'm telling you now, right? The way I'm saying it, right? Number 4 is beautifying oneself with Islamic manners. So it's basic mannerisms. Basic mannerisms. That's number 4. Number 5, warning against the worship of other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the category of sins. This one you have to learn that as it is. So basically it's a bit of aqidah again, but it's more to do with sins. It's more to do with sins. But learn that as it is. Warning against worshiping other than Allah and the categories of sins. And then the last one is number what? Number 6. Preparing the dead body, praying the funeral prayer and burying it. Basically, the fiqh of janazah. The fiqh of janazah. So janazah includes everything. How to, before the person passes away, what do you do when he's on his deathbed? Once he passes away, how do you prepare the dead body? How do you bury them? How do you pray the funeral prayer? All of that. So to summarize, again, firstly, how many parts is the book split into? 6. The first is basic tafsir. The second is basic aqidah. The third is basic fiqh of worship. The fourth is basic mannerisms. The fifth is category of sins, or you could say the wording which is here, warning against the worship of other than Allah and categories of sins. And number 6 is fiqh of janazah. Fiqh of janazah. So fiqh of tafsir, basic tafsir, basic aqidah, basic fiqh of worship, mannerisms, basic mannerisms, categories of sins, and fiqh of janazah. So the book is split into these 6 parts. And just from those topics, you can understand, all of these things are important things that every Muslim needs to know. Every Muslim needs to know about the small surahs. If you're reciting Surah Al-Fatiha, he also adds Ayat Al-Kursi in there as well. Surah Al-Ikhlas, Surah Al-Falaq, you need to know the meanings. You're reading them in Salah every single day. And then basic aqidah, right? And Tawheed, which is the foundation of the religion. And then basic fiqh of Salah and of wudu and of zakah and so on. And then mannerisms, the mannerisms of Muslim, and then different sins. And likewise, janazah, when somebody passes away. These are all rulings that we all must know. Right. The Shaykh, he started off with saying Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We're not going to talk about the introduction too much, each wording of the Shaykh, but a quick one. And this one we've taken before. Why does the author start with the Basmala? Basmala is a short word for Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Why do you start with the Basmala? The Shaykh mentions 4 points. And the first point is 2 within there, so you can make it 4 or 5, I don't mind. But firstly, following the Quran. The Quran starts with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And likewise, every single surah, apart from Surah At-Tawbah, starts with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Likewise, it's a sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In fact, all of the prophets, or the other prophets as well. Sulaiman alayhi salam, when he wrote a letter to Bilqis, Allah says, Innahu min Sulaiman wa innahu bismillahir rahmanir rahim. That he started it off with Bismillahir Rahim. And likewise, when the Prophet ﷺ would write to the other kings and so on, he would start off with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. The second is that there is a hadith which is that every important matter which does not start with the name of Allah, then it is deficient, or it is void, or it is cut. There's different narrations, i.e. deficient and void of blessings. Now this hadith is weak. However, it's mentioned. Why do we mention it? Just as an extra point. Is it a foundational dalil, proof that we are using? No, the foundation one is that the Prophet used to do ikhlas. It's an established sunnah already, right? But the ulama do mention it just to add an extra point, because the foundation is already established. The third point the Shaykh mentions is that the Salaf, the earlier scholars of Islam from the Sahaba, Tabi'een, Atba' Tabi'een and so on, they would also begin their books and their letters with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. There's many narrations of Abu Bakr writing to Umar and so on. And number 4, seeking blessings or an increase in goodness from the blessed name of Allah. That you're starting with the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's the first thing that you're doing. You're basically mentioning Allah. So with that, you are asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to aid you and to bless you in this action that you are doing. So why should we start our books, or any matter for that fact, but especially when it comes to writing the books, why do the scholars start with the Basmala, following the Quran and the Prophets, following there is a hadith as well, even though it's weak, following the Salaf and seeking blessings and aid from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So four reasons. If you want to split the first one into 2, you can do that as well. But let's just stick to what is in the book, so we're not, everyone's not doing different things. So let's stick to 4 points, inshallah. Right. So we're going to start with the first part of the book. What's the first part of the book? Basic tafsir. Good. Right. Lesson 1. So which box is what the author wrote? Ibn Baz, is it yellow or white? Yellow. Yeah, yellow is what the author mentioned, and white is what Shaykh Haytham Sarhan explained. So Ibn Baz, he says, the opening chapter Al-Fatiha and some short chapters from Surah Zalzala to Surah An-Nas, reading it correctly to a Quran teacher, memorizing it, and knowing that which is obligatory to understand. So he's saying these are things that Muslims need to know. You need to know Surah Fatiha, and you need to know some of the short surahs in the Quran, from Surah Zalzala, Surah An-Nas. You need to be able to recite them correctly to a teacher. Now obviously right now there's no time for everyone to recite. If someone's struggling, then on Mondays we have a general Quran lesson. Come to that after Isha. And also after Fajr, I'm from Tuesday to Saturday after Fajr I'm here. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday I'm here after Fajr, and there are students who are memorizing Hadith and some students are memorizing Quran. If you attend, then inshallah we can work on your Quran as well. And knowing that which is obligatory to understand. Right. The Shaykh mentions clarification, and it's very important. And he's basically answering the question here, which is, how did the companions memorize the Quran? How did the companions memorize the Quran? That's what this. If you want to give this box a heading, then it is, how did the companions memorize the Quran? He says the memorization should be according to the way of the companions, or the way the companions did it. Every day 10 verses, along with reading a concise explanation such as Tafsir al-Sa'di, and acting upon them while seeking the help of Allah. So obviously the Sahaba did not have Tafsir al-Sa'di, but what comes in the narration in the Musnad of Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, Abu Abdurrahman al-Sulami, he says that those companions who used to teach us the Quran, and he mentioned Ibn Mas'ud and Uthman and others, they used to memorize 10 ayat. And then they would understand what was in those 10 ayat, understand and ponder and know what the meanings are. And then they would act upon those 10 ayat. Once they have done that, then they would move on to the next set of 10. So the Shaykh is saying, if you want to follow the companions, what do we do? Memorize 10 verses. Now it doesn't have to be restricted to 10. Everyone's different. Some person might do 1, some people might do 20. It depends. Everyone's different and how strong their memory is. But pick an amount that you're comfortable with. Also read a concise explanation of it as well. Try to understand what you are reading as well. And inshallah, that's what we're going to do with these small surahs, which are at the end of the Quran. And then try to act upon them as well, while seeking the help of Allah, and also make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to aid you and to make it easy for you. Now, somebody may ask the question, if I want to read a tafsir of something, which tafsir should I start with? Now, the Shaykh here, he says, the student is advised to begin with the explanation of the Quran by Imam As-Sa'di. Imam As-Sa'di was a teacher of Ibn Uthaymin rahimahullah. He passed away, I can't remember exactly which year, but he passed away just maybe over 50, 60 years ago. And the whole name is Taysir al-Karim al-Rahman fi Tafsir Kalam al-Mannan. That's like the long name. The simple name is the Tafsir of Imam As-Sa'di. Why do the ulama advise this tafsir? I mean, there's so many tafsir. Tafsir bin Kathir, Tafsir al-Tabari, and we talked about these tafsir in the tafsir book. In the tafsir book, we talked about many of them, and I talked about which tafsir book does what specializes in what. So anyone wants more information, go back to there, inshallah. But for now, why should a person stick with tafsir of Imam As-Sa'di? The Shaykh here mentions 5 reasons. I believe in the tafsir book we mentioned maybe a couple more, but we'll stick to 5 for now, inshallah. Firstly, the scholars have advised it and given it great attention. So this is a tafsir, the ulama say a beginner should start with this tafsir. The ulama, they say that a beginner should start with this tafsir. The second point is that it is concise. It's very short. It's not a big tafsir whatsoever. I've got it in, it's quite a thick volume, it's like an A4 size, but it's 1 volume, the whole tafsir. By Dar ibn Jawzi. By Dar ibn Jawzi, if you want to buy it. And Dar ibn Jawzi have another print as well, where it's a bit more, a lot more spaced out, and that's only in 4 volumes, which for a tafsir is very short. I know in the English, I don't know how it worked out to be 10 volumes, but that's the English. I can't talk about Arabic. But each ayah is very, very short. Literally, each ayah is one sentence that he'll write. Generally. Right? Giving you a general understanding of what that ayah is about. Ibn Kathir, for example, he goes into the English Tafsir Ibn Kathir that you have is not the Tafsir Ibn Kathir. That's a abridged version, meaning summarized version. Even that, he'll mention Mujahid said this, Ikrimah said this, and this companion, this Tabi'i said this, and there's a lot of differences of opinion and so on. So it's quite difficult for a beginner. Like, it sounds nice, a lot of detail, but I don't know, Tafsir al-Surah Fatiha, I don't know how many pages it is. Huh? Was that 60, 70, 80 pages? Who's going to read 70 pages, 80 pages for? It's nice if you want extra information, but now imagine you have to read the whole Quran. You're not going to finish it. So as a beginner, your objective is not to go into the most detail of every single word. Your objective is to understand what is Allah saying to you. Just understand what is Allah saying to you. Once you've understood that, then after that you can go into a bit more detail with everything. Number 3, its expressions are easy and clear, without any ambiguity. So it's very easy. The way he's written it is very easy. It's not got technical words, and it's not explaining in a difficult way. You know, the author was a bit more recent, so the way he wrote is a way that, you know, closer to the way we would speak. So it's easier. Number 4 is that it helps one to act upon the Quran by the help of Allah. So the way he's done his tafsir is that not only does he explain the meaning of the ayat, but he also gives indications on how you can actually act upon this ayah. Right? And which is the objective. Right? So we understand so that we can act upon it. So he helps us acting upon it by actually giving those indications. And number 5 is that he emphasizes a lot on Tawheed. It is very important because that's the foundational message of the Quran and of the Sunnah and of Islam. So why should we start with the tafsir of Imam As-Sa'di? 5 reasons as the author mentioned. The first is the scholars have advised it. The second is that it's concise. The third is that it's easy. The fourth is that it helps us act upon it. And the fifth is that the author emphasizes on Tawheed. Right. The next issue is, what are the different types of people when it comes to the Quran? What are the different types of people when it comes to the Quran? Now, when it comes to the Quran, people are, you know, different types. Some people read the Quran more than others, right? So therefore, people are different. But are they different just because of how much they read? No. So what are the different types of people? The people when it comes to the Quran are of 3 types. The people when it comes to the Quran are of 3 types. 2 extremes and 1 in the middle. 2 extremes and 1 in the middle. The first are those who are negligent. Those who are negligent. Now what does that mean? How did they be negligent? How did they abandon the Quran? You know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Furqan, وَقَالَ الرَّسُولُ يَا رَبِّ إِنَّ قَوْمِي اتَّخَذُوا هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ مَهْجُورًا. On the Day of Judgment, the Prophet ﷺ will say to Allah and he will complain, Ya Rabbi, O my Lord, inna qawmi, verily my people, ittakhadhu hadha al-Qur'ana mahjura. They have done hijrah. They have migrated away from this Qur'an. They have abandoned this Qur'an. They have neglected this Qur'an. Look, the Prophet ﷺ will complain to Allah that my people, my qawm have neglected the Qur'an. So the question now is, how does a person neglect the Quran? How does he fall under the category of being negligent of the Quran? The Shaykh here mentions 5 things. The first is reading, which is the obvious one. A person doesn't read. A person does not read. A Muslim should have a daily portion of the Quran that he reads. They call it a wird. Wird. Waw, ra, dal. Wird. A daily portion. A Muslim, each individual Muslim, everyone's different, so that everyone's daily wird would be slightly different. Somebody who's memorized the Quran, it should be more. Somebody who hasn't will be less. However, every Muslim should have a wird that he is consistent upon and that he reads every single day. And the best would be is that if he specifies a specific time for it, whether it's at night before sleeping, whether it's after Fajr. And Wallahu Alam, I believe the best time is at Fajr, because it's a time of barakah. As the Prophet said, there is barakah in the early mornings. Likewise, you've just prayed your salah, so it's night, you're already in the masjid. Also, at that time, people are awake, so there's a lot of sukoon, a lot of tranquility and quiet. Also, you don't have anything going on at that time, right? I know Fajr is a bit later now, so people do have to go work, but even then, some sort of time. Right? Normally what happens at Fajr, you go and you have breakfast and you get ready for work. But especially now, by the end of the month, Fajr is going to come back to 6 o'clock. So there will be time. Okay, obviously I know everyone's work time is different, but generally, for the general person or for the kids that go to school, there is time. No one's telling you to stay for the whole hour necessarily. The best is that if you can sit down, remain until sunrise, which is about an hour, and then pray 2 rak'at, and then the Prophet said, the one who basically does that, then he gets the reward of a complete hajj. But if you can't do that, at least sit down 10 minutes, 20 minutes. If you do that, imagine every daily you're doing just 20 minutes. How much would you complete over a long period of time? So the first is reading. The second is memorization. Especially the small short surahs. A Muslim should try to memorize them. Especially, it's without a doubt the ones that you have to recite in salah. So your surah Fatiha, maybe your quls at the end, and the ones that you have to read as du'as and adhkar and so on. The third is pondering over the Quran. You need to ponder over the Quran. In fact, Allah in the Quran mentions that this is the reason He brought down the Quran. كِتَابٌ أَنزَلْنَاهُ إِلَيْكَ مُبَارَكٌ لِيَدَّبَّرُوا آيَاتِهِ. That this book we have brought down, it is blessed, لِيَدَّبَّرُوا آيَاتِهِ, so that the people can do tadabbur, they can contemplate and ponder over its ayat. And number 4, which is the ultimate objective, but we only get to this objective by pondering over it, which is to act upon it. You have to act upon the Quran. What's the point of reading it if you're not going to act upon it? It's not a song that you're just going to read the lyrics to and then that's it. No, it's a message. Al-Hasan al-Basri rahimahullah said that the Salaf, or those that came before you, used to see the Quran as rasaila min rabbihim, as letters from their Lord. They would ponder over it during the night and act upon it during the day. And obviously, as I mentioned, we can only act upon it once we've understood its meaning. And the last point, the 5th point the Shaykh mentions, is treating sickness with it. So the Quran is a cure. It's a shifa, as Allah describes in the Quran. It's a cure for our physical illnesses and for our spiritual illnesses, for our desires, for doubts, for everything. The Quran is a cure. And there's many stories. For example, the story of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiyallahu anhu, when him and other companions passed by a village and the chief of that village was ill. They recited Surah Fatiha and he was cured. And the Prophet said, what made you know that Surah Al-Fatiha is a ruqyah, it is a cure? How did you know that it was a cure? So, how does a person become negligent and abandon the Quran? He abandons reading it, memorizing it, pondering over it, acting upon it, and using it as a cure. This is one extreme, those who are negligent. The other extreme is those people that read and memorize. So all they do is read and memorize, mashallah, which is good. But then they don't ponder over it, nor do they act upon it. Meaning, they do, so these 5 boxes you have at the bottom, they only do a couple of them. And they think that's enough. And also a lot of Muslims do, they'll read, which is good. We're not saying it's not good, but it's not enough. You can't say, I've done what I need to. No. Quran's not being revealed, especially if you're not Arab, you don't know what you're reciting. Yes, you get rewarded every letter that you recite, 10 rewards and so on. But that's not the ultimate objective. The ultimate objective is understand and act upon it. Okay, so what about those who are in the middle? There are those people that read, memorize, ponder, act upon it. Basically, they do all of the 5 boxes which are at the bottom. And this is the way of the earlier scholars and those who follow them. We mentioned the narration of the Sahaba, 10 ayat, understand it, act upon it, and then move forward. Yeah. So, yeah, here is just the ayah that I mentioned, and so on. Right, so far in the introduction, we've taken a lot of points. We have taken a lot of points. It's all written, that's why it seems a bit quicker. Normally, I have to stop and you guys have to write. So probably the whole hour would have been taken. But since it's written, it saves us a lot of time. So we've taken a number of issues, right? We've taken, basically, so what is this book and what's the title of the book? We've taken why is this book important to study? How is the book split? Why do we start with Basmala? How did the Sahaba study the Quran? Which tafsir should a beginner begin with? And what are the different types of people when it comes to the Quran? We'll go through the tafsir of Imam Sa'di. I'm going to get the other mic quickly. Now, what the Shaykh does is that we're going to go. What the Shaykh has done is that he's got each surah, Surah Fatiha, Surah Zalzal, Surah An-Nas, and likewise some other important parts like Ayatul Kursi. And he's got the tafsir of Imam Sa'di and basically just placed it there, copied and pasted it, and that suffices. And that's good from the Shaykh. Why? Because he's acting upon the advice that he's given. Right? It wouldn't make sense for him to advise you with one and then do the tafsir of something else. So he does tafsir of Imam Sa'di, and he's mentioned it here that look, selections from Taysir Karim al-Rahman fi Tafsir Kalam al-Manan by Imam Abdurrahman al-Sa'di. So he's not like he's claiming it to be his own tafsir. He's mentioned that it is the tafsir of Imam al-Sa'di. And that, as the ulama mentioned, Nawawi and others, that أن تضيف القول إلى قائله من بركة العلم, that when you attribute knowledge to the one who said that knowledge, then that's how a person attains barakah, blessings in his knowledge. So when you learn something, right, if it's something you've heard from somebody else, mention who you've heard it from, mention where you've taken it from. Don't make it seem like it is your own work. Right, because that could lead to arrogance. It could, people do that, plagiarism and so on, act like it's their work and take all the credit. But the ulama, out of their humbleness, and humility, they attribute the knowledge to who they got it from. Also, one of the things the Shaykh will mention is he'll mention that each surah is a Makki surah or Madani surah. Right? What does it mean, Makki and Madani? Awab? Yeah, a Makki surah is any surah which has been revealed before Hijrah, before the Prophet migrated to Medina. And a Madani surah is a surah which has been revealed after the Prophet did Hijrah. So it's not about the time, it's not about the place, it's about the time. Before Hijrah is called Makki, after Hijrah is called Madani. Right? So, Umar, I'll ask you a question. The Prophet Muhammad, which one's Umar? The other one, right. So the same thing. Right, Muhammad, got a question. The Prophet ﷺ, when he was given the farewell sermon in the last Hajj, only a few months before he passed away. The Prophet ﷺ was in Mecca, in Arafah, and he was giving a khutbah to the people. And the ayah came down, Al-Yawma akmaltu lakum dinakum. Allah said, today I have completed for you your religion. Is this ayah Makki or Madani? It's Makki. Madani. Why? Very good. It's after Hijrah. So even though it was in Makkah, when was it? I give him all the information. I specifically said a few months before the Prophet passed away. So that's after Hijrah. Right? So it's after the Prophet migrated. So therefore it is Madani. Right? So the Shaykh will do that. So Surah Fatiha is a Makki surah. Now, how long is the explanation? It's a bit long. Okay, khair. We'll stop here for today then, inshallah. I was going to go through it, but it's a bit long. I don't want to make the lesson too long. Inshallah, I'm going to try my best not to make the lessons too long, bi'idhnillah. So, alhamdulillah, today what we've taken is introduction. We've taken introduction, and I think if you've all understood how the lessons are going to work, from Thursday, inshallah, so it's Thursday, Tuesday and Thursday the lessons are. Previously, we were doing one book on one day, and another book on another day, right? So we were doing Tuesdays, we were doing Ta'adim al-Ilm beginning and Surah Thalatha. Thursdays, now one book on both days. Now, I don't mind if somebody needs to take a day off. Something happens, you need to go somewhere, it happens. However, with the condition is that you catch up. And trust me, if you do not catch up before the next lesson, then that means you got 2 lessons to catch up on. And what's going to happen? They're going to pile up and you're just going to drop out. And I know so many people that just when it piles up, they drop out, and then they come up to me and say sorry, and they say all of that. I don't really care because it doesn't affect me, right? But they themselves, a few weeks later, a month later, they come back saying, I regret it. So when you start the book again, I'll definitely be there. I don't know when I'm going to start the book again. Why not start the book again? Right? So don't let shaitan get to you. Don't procrastinate. Make sure you attend, stay up to date. It's not long, it's only an hour. You come to pray Isha anyway. Just stay with the brothers, enjoy yourselves. You have the lesson, and then you go. And then the revision is only 10 minutes, 15 minutes, however much you want to do. Especially when it's to do with basic, important lessons that every single Muslim needs to know. Right? So make sure you're consistent. And if there has to be a time where you can't attend live, no problems. Make sure that you catch up. And alhamdulillah, it's not difficult. You don't really have to write. If you wanted to make your own notes, no problem. But if you didn't want to make notes, right, majority is written. My advice, the way I would do it, is I would print this out, right? Have the printed, because I like printed versions. I don't like this tablet stuff, right? And then if I need to add, everything's written. And if I need to add something, I'll just annotate on the side. So very minimal reading. Obviously, everyone's different. Some people want to write it out themselves in their own writing. That's completely fine as well. But it's completely up to you. So make sure that you are consistent, inshallah. And I'll see all of you on Thursday, inshallah, ready to be asked questions in the beginning. Bi-idhnillah. Jazakallah khair. Subhanakallah. Alhamdulillah. La ilaha illa ant.